What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the 715 Brew Crew Tailgates podcast as part of the Man Cave podcast brought to you by Hy-Vee. We're going to talk some baseball here in just a second with our guy, Brandon Berg, my Brewers guy. But a quick reminder, don't forget to follow and subscribe to the Man Cave podcast and the 715 Brew Crew Tailgate podcast, wherever you listen to your podcasts. I know we're less than 2 weeks away, by the way, for pitchers and catchers reporting, which is, all right, baseball season's kind of coming up here a little bit. But, MLB Network has done their top 10 list, which we've talked a little bit about here. Brewers are so close to being the only team with 2 players, by the way, listed at number 1. I say we count half because it was Devin Williams for a closer and then William Contreras. But now it's the Yankees as the only one with 2. They didn't do DH, which Dodgers probably would have had Ohtani, I would assume, and Freeman was 1, so Dodgers would have been on there. But 2 Brewers showed up at left field. Christian Yelich was number 4, and they have all these analytics that they did it for, and Jackson Chourio at number 7. So we've talked a little bit about this, how the outfield is going to shape up, and odds are it's probably all going to work out, injuries, off days, whatever, that sort of thing. But if you had to pick between the 2 who you'd like to see spend more time in left field, Chourio or Yelich?
Chourio.
Is it just because you want, I said, I want him to continue to get better and more experience out there? Is that part of it?
I think he's a better defender at this stage of the game.
Than Yelich?
Yes.
Okay.
Plus, with, since we still don't entirely know how, the whole back situation is going to work with Yelich coming off the surgery, I know Christian in the past has said he likes to be out there. He doesn't necessarily like the DH, but, it might be, you'll be able to kind of work everybody in, but still, it's almost until you know a little bit more, it's kind of some preventive maintenance almost.
Now, I think the easy solution that a lot of people have will be we'll move him to first. That seems to be the easy one for a lot of people out there, but it's not that easy with a guy like Yelich.
That was the Ryan Braun thing for many years. Plus,
at least he had experience in the infield, though, right?
Yeah, he was a third baseman too, right. And I think he played shortstop in college or something. Yeah. But also the thing too is when you're playing first base, you're still kind of jostling yourself. Mm-hmm. You're going down for balls, you're bopping around. It's not like that's a super great spot for your back. I get, in a perfect world, that's what you could do. Mm-hmm. Because then obviously the Brewers have plenty of outfield depth where you can, my goodness, if you're every day, health willing, you have some combination of Chourio, Mitchell, Perkins, and Frelick as your 3 outfielders, you're in pretty good shape, especially defensively.
Yeah.
But I think that's just one of those things that's kind of easier said than done. Mm-hmm. Even though in some ways, Yelich could make it, kind of maybe a first base could be a good spot for him. That's just not an easy thing to do.
Mm-hmm. No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I think that's the easy solution for Bryce Harper, moved to first, but he was catcher, I think, as a prospect, then outfield, and then moved over to first in that too. It's just, and maybe Yelich has had experience. So I don't know, but I don't think it's as easy as just saying
you're a first baseman now
over there,
right?
It's the Moneyball quote, right? Ron, tell him how easy it is to play first.
Yeah, it's incredibly hard.
It's incredibly hard to play first base.
If Chris Pratt could do it.
If Chris Pratt could do it, if Brad Pitt says it's easy, then there you go. I want to ask you a question that Hudson's been asking me almost every other day. Who's playing shortstop? And if it is Ortiz, then who's playing third?
It's a great question. Those are great questions. Your kid's asking the right questions.
Yeah.
And the answer is I'm not entirely sure.
Do you feel because there's still some infielders out there, right?
There are. And remember back at the start of the offseason when I did my offseason exercise, I didn't exactly think the Brewers would throw a lot at third base. I went a couple veteran route, that they could still do that. Jose Iglesias is still out there. He would be, I think, a good kind of high floor guy. Mm-hmm. And maybe we know the Brewers. There's always going to be that kind of payroll thing we got to keep an eye on. But they've also got some minor leaguers that are starting to reach the upper levels. So maybe you don't want to commit long term to somebody knowing that you got some guys you really like that maybe are a year or two away, but still, like, it's right now it's a glaring weakness. Assuming Joey Ortiz moves to short, which I think is the right move. I think kind of that's the move they're thinking. I think his bat profile is better at shortstop than at third base. Shortstop's generally a more defensive-focused position. Obviously, the last several years, the Brewers and the fans have kind of been a little bit spoiled with Willie Adames there.
Yeah.
But his bat and what he can bring to the table, I think profiles better at shortstop. Plus, I just like the idea of having that consistent, everyday combo up the middle.
Yeah.
Just for chemistry's sake and all that good stuff with him and Bryce Terang at second. So, but yeah, right now, if the season started today, and of course it doesn't, and the Brewers are always willing to, wait a little bit before they make their move, the third baseman is going to be some combination of Caleb Durbin,
Tyler Black.
It doesn't sound like it.
Okay.
It doesn't sound like he's got the arm for it.
Okay.
I think he's more in the mix to play at first base.
Okay.
Probably Caleb Durbin, Oliver Dunn, Andrew Monasterio, which doesn't, no disrespect to any of those guys, but Durbin was one piece, the other piece in the Devin Williams trade.
Right.
Obviously, Oliver Dunn we saw at points last year, and Andrew Monasterio has been a utility guy for the team the last couple of years, but none of those guys are have really done much yet to kind of solidify that. Hey, that's that solidify that confidence, I think, among fans. It might be a different story within the organization, but certainly on the outside looking in right now, that's kind of that's a glaring thing to see right now.
Right. So two-part, I'll ask this one first. Because of the lack of movement so far, or the players that they've gotten in return, like for Devin Williams and such, is this a team that is just kind of focused on the youth movement right now? And because Willie Adames is gone, Devin Williams is gone, Ortiz is going over there, maybe a younger third baseman coming in, as you mentioned. Is it, and we know about the outfielders, yes, Contreras and Rhys Hoskins and Yelich are up there, but Contreras is still fairly young at this point. Is it more of a youth movement at this point? Is this, how do you make what's going on with this roster construction right now?
I think they want to give their young guys a chance to play, but I also think that if the opportunity strikes, they would still be willing to bring in a veteran somehow.
Because they didn't bring back Wade Miley, which I think some people are like, you couldn't give him a minor league deal?
Right.
Because he went to the Reds on a minor league deal.
But I also think that they like their starting pitching group. And generally, I've learned, especially over the last couple of years, that I'm gonna more so give the team the benefit of the doubt when it comes to pitching, especially out of the bullpen.
As long as you still have Chris Hook on the roster?
Right. And just kind of the infrastructure they have in place in general. But that these are the questions that are going to get asked.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think if you're the Brewers and your ownership and your management and your whoever, you understand that. And there's reasons that Brewers fans are asking these questions. This is a team that it lost its whether who you would consider to be the quote unquote best hitter is kind of up for debate. I mean, there's a couple of ways you can look at it, but I don't think anyone deny that Willie Adames is a very important person. Not just when it comes to his offense and playing solid defense, even if his metrics fell off a little bit last year defensively, but just the leadership also as well. I mean, he was someone that people really valued,
right?
And how that all works out. I mean, now some of that I think you can make up for just by younger players improving. You're not going to make it all up because maybe Garrett Mitchell plays 120 games, or Jackson Churio takes a step forward, or Sal Frelick or Bryce Terang take another step forward, whatever the case is. But it still would just be nice to see them do something, because so far obviously the big thing they've done is the Devin Williams trade,
right? And
that's really it. I mean, they've signed 2 players to major league deals, but I mean, it's less than $1 million,
right?
It's just. I'm not a believer in the idea that an organization needs to do something, for fans to get excited. And at this point, I do think this team in many ways has earned the benefit of the doubt. But, as spring training is only a few weeks away, and those names I mentioned earlier are kind of slated to start at third base, I don't blame anybody for that position if you're a little bit less than stoked.
You mentioned one player with Willie Adames, you lose some power, you lose some pop in the middle of that lineup. Is that guy that either has to or potentially could fill that is Garrett Mitchell? I mean, last year we saw him, Brewers gave him a shot many times batting in that third spot, towards the top half of the lineup. And I know, so I guess maybe the question is he that candidate for breakout player for the Brewers? And he's been dealt with injuries that, have kind of slowed down his career a little bit. But is he that guy, if you had to pick somebody on the roster right now to kind of maybe fill that void? Because it's fair to say he's got more power than Sal Frelick, right? He's got more power.
That's very fair to
say. Okay. But is he that guy that
could be?
They're hoping that kind of takes
could
that
be.
step.
I mean, for him, I think the thing is, you mentioned the injury concerns. He's struggled to stay healthy. And if he played 140 games, where maybe there is an IL stint in there at some point, like, I would love to see what it looks like, because I've been someone that's been a little bit down on Garrett Mitchell, but it's been for that reason. When he's produced at the major league level, I've been impressed with how he's been able to kind of cut down on his strikeouts. I mean, from when in 2022 when he played at the end of the year to last year, he's cut his strikeout rate down by like 10%, which is a lot. Like, to get it down to that upper 30% range, which is still high, but like, it's doable. It's always kind of like, I kind of reference it as kind of walking that Keston Hiura line. The thing I always said about Keston Hiura is, like, if he struck out 30% of the time, he could have been a superstar, but he couldn't. It was 40%, and that's a big difference. So you're going to get the defense there. There's speed, there's power. Like, he's patient. There's a lot of things I like with Garrett Mitchell. That's why he was a first-round pick, and honestly, he kind of went a little lower than many people thought when the Brewers drafted him. But he's just got to be able to stay on the field. And it seems like it's always been something different. It's not like it's a recurring same injury over and over.
Right.
It's just been kind of, one time it's this, one time it's that.
Gets hit in the finger and it's a broken finger.
Right, and stuff like that. Like, that's just stuff that happens. But you'd just like to see what he could do over the course of a year if he got a chance to, be out there every day. And at this point, if he can, he's someone that I would definitely have out there every day.
Is the expectation for Jackson Chourio to be a 30-30 player this year? Because that's some of the projections.
Yeah, I mean, that's
out there.
I mean,
I know last year we did our preseason picks, and I think one of them was like, who's going to be the most disappointing?
Right.
And I said Chourio, just because I think a lot of people had such high expectations. Well, started off slow, but then he probably surpassed that. So are we going to have too high this year for year two for Jackson Chourio?
Right. Like, you got to remember, he's still like going to be 21 playing in the majors when at a time when most guys are playing like double A ball. So that's going to be, I think, something out there. But it's also, I mean, as much as you kind of want to go gung ho and say, like, okay, this guy, he could be the guy, and like, he very well could. But like, you still want to make sure you're not kind of getting too far out in front of your skis. And more so because you just want to be patient with him. Like, if he comes out and, it's a struggle a little bit more this year, you don't want to suddenly just kind of be like, he's a bum. Because, he's a 21-year-old playing at the majors, and, baseball's all about adjustments. He made very good adjustments after the first couple months last year. Well, now teams are going to, make adjustments to him. That's kind of the chess match of, okay, you adjust, I adjust, you adjust, I adjust, and, we'll see. But, obviously at this point, what he could potentially do is going to loom very large into ultimately how good this Brewers team is. If he continues that upward trajectory, then, that can help make up for, some of the losses that, maybe the team hasn't, entirely addressed to, our satisfaction yet.
I know, I think it was it Ken Rosenthal or Jason Stark, or maybe they were on the podcast or it was their podcast, and I saw it scrolling through the X the other day, and I've seen it a couple times now, but the question that is, and I blame the Dodgers for this, but the question that's coming through now is, does baseball need a salary cap? Now you got national writers throwing that out there, and I know they've got labor deals coming up in, a year, a couple of years,
right,
or something like that.
Right, it comes up in a couple of years.
But I still struggle to see them agreeing to a salary cap, Brandon.
I maybe it was MLB Trade Rumors, I forget where, but someone had posted a very interesting poll question. And maybe it was after 2026 was when when the labor deal expired. But the question was, as a baseball fan, would you take a salary cap if it meant a year of a lockout? So say it's before 20, would you give up 2027 of a baseball season for there ultimately to be some sort of salary cap and floor? Like, I think both things would need to be in there to make sure these owners are spending.
Yeah.
And the result, I think, was like 2/3 people said yes.
Wow. So they would sacrifice a whole year of baseball.
Right, yeah.
You know.
Would you say there's no 2027 baseball season if it meant they figured it out and came back in 2028 with a cap?
Yeah.
Which, and that's a quite like, I mean, I think it would take something like that for it to happen because, as you said, I don't think the players' union is going to be in any hurry to give it up because you're limiting earning power. Mm-hmm. And I had seen, and I thought it was interesting, but some talk about maybe trying to move closer to a kind of what the NBA does. And I never really understood why the NBA did it until I started explaining. Where you look at the NBA and some of their big contracts, obviously they have limits.
Yep.
You always hear the max, the super max, stuff like that.
Yep.
And their contracts, I don't think run any longer than like 5 years, is it? And there's a reason for that because they want to make sure that organizations aren't necessarily hamstrung if you sign player X to a max deal. And a year or two into it, that player obviously falls off. Like, you don't want a team that just is kind of toast for 5 years because they're paying John Wall $45 million or whatever it is. So it's tough because, like, I'm a believer. Like, players should be able to get, like, if someone's going to pay you $750 million, then that's what you're worth. Like, that's the market.
Right.
But
don't apologize for it.
Right. But at the same time, like, we are fans of smaller market teams. Mm-hmm. And that's I think this is like there's layers to this, but at the same time, there's also owners that I do believe, and I think Milwaukee's one of them, could spend more money than they do. Like, it annoys me when I see so many owners crying poor, but yet the thing I think we know about a lot of these owners is they're very successful business people, and generally, what makes very successful business people is they have good business sense. If they owned a sports franchise and that team was not making them money, they would sell that sports franchise. These owners who are saying they're not making very much money are not exactly in a big hurry to sell the team that they're not making very much money on. Why is that?
Yeah.
Probably because they're making more money than they're leading on because they're not going to come out and say, we only had a $90 million payroll. We won 73 games, but hey, I made a bunch of money this year, so be happy for me. No.
Now, I know, like, the NFL changed this because now you can, and I don't know the proper term, but it's like you can have, like, these investment groups be like a 10% holder in that because the values were getting so high.
Right.
I don't know if baseball does that or if they could do that sort of thing.
And that's, like, I always get nervous with those because obviously it's definitely all about maximizing profits because that's what they're investing to make money.
Right.
Like, if you're a team owner or something, like, you're making money, but at the same time, there's also part of you that's like, okay, I also want to win, and I'm not sure with those investment, I'm trying to think of the proper term for it because venture capitalist.
Yes.
We've seen it so much in other walks of life, and I don't think it's been good for those things. I mean, I can kind of look at my line of work and speak to that in some cases, but that just worries me, because then you're really bringing in people that are prioritizing, okay, what's it going to take for us to maximize how much money we make? And that could not necessarily be a good thing for your on-the-field competitive product.
Right. No, I'm very curious, because it expires December 1st, 2026.
Okay, so because I think it was 2022 when the
poll question was out
No.
there?
I mean, I think it was 2022 when they signed the new one.
Oh, yeah.
Because remember, the start of this season got moved back a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that was 2022. So that would make sense, 2, 3, 4, that 5-year deal.
Well, and then, like, the COVID year, they were trying to figure out
right,
stuff,
and that one, I think they just bumped everything back. But, I mean, that's... there's just a lot of things that are going to come to a head at one point. It's something,
If there's one league and players union that I have the least amount of confidence in that they can agree to something right away is probably baseball.
Yes, because within recent history here, we've already seen that.
NFL's gotten better since that 2011.
They have, and I think they also all realize, like, hey, things are going so darn well right now. Like, let's just not mess this up.
Right.
Because, you can look back at baseball '94. I mean, that gave that was a big time detriment to the sport that in some ways it hasn't recovered from. I mean, there's a lot of people. I mean, you look at the popularity of baseball in the 70s, the 80s, into the 90s, it was significant. And there was just a lot of people that, that hit them really hard, and they haven't come back, or it's just not the same for them.
Right. Even hockey's gotten better with Garrett Bettman a little bit with negotiations.
Yeah, I mean, they've had plenty of practice.
Yeah.
I mean, with a couple of their lockouts, but it just feels to me like there's gonna be a significant moment of coming, a lot of things coming to a head, and I don't know, what that looks like.
Well, hopefully you and I are still doing this so we could talk about, because I got a feeling there's gonna be a lot of things to talk about at that point.
I think so.
It's gonna be interesting.